Hail and well met. It's time for another question. This one is from agroggybrog. Do you have any insights into or thoughts about exposing extremely granular difficulty options to players? One of the first game dev things I ever did was a Deadfire mod that adjusted the PC's accuracy defense growth per level to let me slide the difficulty curve to however I wanted, and it sent me straight down the path of a personalized difficulty for every game I can mod it into. Progressively scaling difficulty in Total War, plus X to enemy rolls in BG3, percentage damage and scaling modifiers in Cyberpunk and Witcher 3, etc., etc., etc. This could essentially double as a list of my favorite games, and I know that I wouldn't feel the same way about them, any of them, if I hadn't tweaked the difficulty to force greater engagement with the systems on my end. Are there significant cons to opening up this sort of in-depth difficulty customization to players, or do we just not get it because there aren't enough players interested in this sort of thing and it gets triaged out? Um, I would say that it's a mix of things. So yes, I think they're good. I think that if it cost nothing, which it does not, if it cost nothing, then I would say let players in game set their difficulty options however they'd like. And when it comes to exposing data tables and letting players mod that stuff, yeah, just let them do whatever the heck they want. Um, the first games that I worked on were Infinity Engine games, and you could mod 2DAs and people could hack all sorts of stuff, and I thought that was great. Of course, I worked on Neverwinter 2, which you can go crazy with stuff in Neverwinter 2 and Fallout New Vegas, extremely moddable. The challenge with later games that I've worked on has been that it's been difficult to expose those things, especially on a data level. Um, and when it comes to in-game difficulty, I think that it's just not prioritized. Game development has a lot of things going on, a lot of stuff happening, and often you have go look at an options menu. I would look at an options menu in most games, and there's a lot of stuff there, and it takes a long time to get kind of just all of that stuff up and running. But then after that stuff is all done, do you have enough time to include individual sliders or checkboxes for all the individual levels of micro difficulty or preferences that a player might have? I'm not saying this is the way it should be. I'm saying this is the way that it typically goes in game development. Um, I will say that over time, I have shifted my thinking about difficulty away from discrete levels of difficulty and more styles of play or styles of player. And I think that probably will, in the long run, yield better results for the overall player base. So, what I mean by this is, I don't think that there's a player this is an easy player, this is a hard player. I think you have players that come to the games for different reasons, and you can sort of approximate those in levels of difficulty, but it's more about what are they trying to get out of this game? Why are they here? How much time are they able to devote on the game? And what do they want to get out of it? And I know that's kind of maybe getting a little too philosophical, but I do think that that's kind of really that's really what a player is thinking about when they go into a game. There are sort of three broad categories that I've been thinking of. One is the explorer. And the explorer, the way I describe it is they're here for a good time, not a hard time, and not a long time. And the explorer wants to cruise around and they want to see cool stuff and they want to be involved in a story that they enjoy and they don't want to redo things. They don't want to redo fights a whole bunch. They don't want to have to rebuild their characters. They don't got a lot of time and they don't want to get frustrated. You could say that that's easy, but I do think it's a mindset that's sort of, I'm trying to relax. I got a lot going on and I want to use this game as a way to just chill out. And I think for a single player game, that's a perfectly reasonable reason to come to a game. And I think for the type of games that Obsidian makes, where we have a lot of characters and stories and environments and quests where hopefully you're making interesting decisions, that if you want to approach that game as an explorer, there's a lot of stuff there for you. And if you don't really want to engage with the mechanics at a very deep level, okay, I think that's completely reasonable. And I think there are lots of things that we can do to accommodate you, um, and we should. The second type of player, which I think is very common, is the adventurer. And the adventurer wants a little more friction. They want a little more challenge. They're going to spend a little more time. They want a little bit more push from the game. They want the game to kind of give a little bit of feedback and pressure to them. For example, not level scaling if they go into a difficult area. They feel like they need to be a little more thoughtful about what they do, but it's also not, they don't want to redo a fight a dozen times. They don't want to die a lot. They don't want to have to constantly be thinking about a ton of stuff. And they're not really looking for something that's super simulative or super realistic necessarily. It's that kind of middle ground. And I think that's a very common player type. The third type of player I think of as the survivalist. And I would put myself in that category. Probably not the most extreme. I don't think I am the most extreme type of player, but I want a fair amount of friction. I want a fair amount of simulation. I want to have to think about stuff. I don't like things scaling to me. Usually I like to push at something and have the game kind of smack me back. And then I have to really kind of dig in and think about what I'm doing. And I think those players like things that are more immersive and simulative in the mechanics. Like you can get a lot of immersion just by wandering around and having an immersive environment. But I think they're looking for things that are more simulative. They're looking for things that are a little more crunchy, require more planning and forethought. And, depending on the type of the game, they're looking for something that just feels where the mechanics are more integrated into the experience as a whole thing. So all of these things, all these types of players, I do think encapsulate the broad player base that comes to the games that Obsidian makes overall. I would say, for example, survivalists aren't necessarily interested in Pentiment, but you can find people that are explorers playing Pillars 1 or Pillars 2. You can definitely also find people that are more in the survivalist where they're trying to eke out every advantage that they can. And so when we talk about difficulty options, in addition to trying to make modding more possible for people, which is a constant sort of fight where you have to, I shouldn't say fight within a team. It's more like you have so much stuff to do in making the game that continually making sure that you are opening the game up to people for modification is a lot of work. You have to really be constantly bringing up like, hey, is this going to cut off modding? Is this going to make it more difficult for people to mod the game? Is there anything we can do to make it easier, less challenging to access this stuff? Because the thing is, to get to sort of one of the later points in the question, yes, only a subset of players, let's say it's only 5%, that might be optimistic. 5% of the players are going to engage with options in the menus beyond the broad difficulty levels. Even less than that will probably engage with the game if there's modding available. And online, there are a lot of enthusiastic people, but you have to remember that Bethesda's games, and I'll sort of include the Bethesda tech for Fallout New Vegas, there's a very passionate community, and I don't want to downplay how many of them are, but also literally tens of millions of people have bought Skyrim. Over 10 million have played Fallout New Vegas. And so when you get down to even fractions of percentages, that's a ton of people. So the thing is, though, they're so enthusiastic and they do such amazing work. And for that community, it is so valuable that I do think it's worth it. I don't think it can be measured in terms of overall percentage of players. I think it's more about, does this, for the extreme sort of enthusiast community, does this allow them to create a community where they can make things and share them and, keep playing the game and keep enjoying the game and proselytizing the game to new players? I mean, there are still people that are coming back to Fallout New Vegas, which is crazy to me, but they're playing mods. They're using my mod that I made, 15 years ago, which is kind of wild. So, in a lot of cases, when we talk about difficulty options, one, they should be exposed, but two, I often ask on a development level, I'll say, who is this for? What player is this for? And sometimes the player that is described is not a real person. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody has their own individual preferences, but sometimes, for example, I will hear someone say, some players hate crafting. And I'm like, hate it? Hate it like they're not going to play a game if it has crafting in it? Or is it just not a thing that they're fond of? What's the cost of not having this? So are we not going to have crafting at all? Are we going to make crafting less integral into the experience? Could we dig in a little more and find out for players that don't like crafting, what about crafting is it that they don't like? Is it that they fundamentally do not like the idea of finding objects and using them together to make a new thing? Or is it bad interfaces? Is it the fact that they're required to craft to progress? What's the real problem here? And then how are we going to solve it? If we disable it or make it so it's not necessary at all, does that impact the overall design of the rest of the game? Then, for example, we'll have something like, let's say, bullet drop. So some games have simulated projectiles that not only have travel time, but they also have drop. So, a heavy bullet, slow moving, will eventually arc and drop off. And survivalists think usually that that's really cool. And a lot of other players, they don't understand what's going on, especially if the way that it drops is really non-intuitive and it's just kind of frustrating. And that's clearly for one type of player. That's for the survivalists. But it's also a thing that if you said, just disable it, yeah, the game becomes a lot easier, arguably, when you do long-range shooting. But for a certain type of player, that's great. That's fine. It doesn't break the game economy. It doesn't, really change some core mechanic. It's changing a supplemental thing in a way where, yeah, if you want to opt into it, it's going to be a lot more challenging. That's probably the thing that you want because that's the style of game you want to play. And if you don't, it's not a big deal. You just turn it off. And that's usually a simple thing to do. So when it comes to individual difficulty options, I think it is worth, if you're a developer, talking about who is the difficulty option for? What are the options sort of appealing to for those different player types? And then how should you expose that within individual difficulty types and then also little sub options? So that's maybe an overly long way to talk about this question. But in the end, I do think that giving more granular difficulty options is a very good thing. I think we should prioritize it more. I think I should prioritize it more. And of course, modding does extend the life. You have to get to a critical mass of moddability for communities to really dig in and enjoy it. But if you get that, even if it's a small percentage of the overall player base, I absolutely think it's worth it and should be prioritized. Thank you.